Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from the beautiful metaverse, and more specifically from beautiful Danville, Illinois, homeland of the Corellian tradition, and this is Midday with Reverend Don. Welcome. And as you know, if you follow Midday with Reverend Don, you can type your questions or comments into whatever platform you're watching on, and for most of those platforms, your comments will show up here in my chat room. I am planning on having a guest today, Krys Copeland, joining us from the Netherlands, but she is running a few minutes late and will be with us in a few minutes. Yesterday, my guests were Phoenix Coffin Williams and Alyssa Kemp Highcorrell, and we had a lovely talk about divination and some fights with the internet as well. Hopefully, we will not be having any fights with the internet today. I hope that you are having a lovely week so far. Today, we are going to be talking about new things from Corellian Publishing. And of course, the most recent thing from Corellian Publishing is that Reverend Don's book of stones, metals, and crystals is now available. And hello to Kayleen in the chat room. It's good to see you, Kayleen. And Kayleen says, Marang Narin. Good morning in Wiradjuri from Australia. And good morning to you, Kayleen. I know it's a very different hour there than it is here. We appreciate your being with us. Lately we've been talking a lot about deeper aspects of metaphysics. As I was just saying, Reverend Don's Book of Stones, Metals, and Crystals is now available. If you ordered the ebook, you should already have it. If you ordered the hard copy, it is on the way. They've been ordered from the publisher. I will sign them and send them out the moment they hit. And there are a number of things in that book I would consider to be fairly high-level work in terms of metaphysics, particularly in terms of crystal healing, and in terms of how to do crystal grids and the like. I think you'll find it a fascinating book. It also, it talks about the obvious things you would expect in a book on stones and crystals, like the metaphysical meanings of stones and crystals, how to use them as amulets and talismans. But it also talks about far more complicated uses as well. And for each of the different stones, it gives examples of how you would use them in different ways, why you would use them. So if you've ordered that book, I think you will quite enjoy it. I enjoyed writing it. It took longer than expected, but that's one of the things that happens when you're writing a book. And Kayleen says, I have just read the discussion on natural versus artificial crystals, which was very interesting. Thank you, Kayleen. Hello.
Hi, good to see you, Reverend Don. I apologize for my tardiness. I will. The time changed in America, but it did not change here yet. So
Yeah.
I was a little
Every
bit
year, this
confused.
is a thing that happens. And
Yeah.
I've noticed for a long time that anything that we're doing with people in Europe is likely to be disrupted at this time of year.
Yeah, it would be very nice if the government would just agree to stop doing this. It causes so much chaos every year and twice a year too. Uh,
So
yes, but
Kayleen was just saying that the discussion on natural versus artificial crystals in the Book of Stones, Metals, and Crystals was very interesting. And yeah, I'm a great believer in the idea that it's not only the natural stones that can be useful, even to the point that not only laboratory grown stones, but even more artificial stones, I think, can sometimes have their uses because everything that exists is magical. Everything that exists is ultimately made of natural substances, even if sometimes more readily than others. And I think if you look for the magical purposes, you will find them. So how are
Yeah.
you this week, Krys?
I'm doing better. My partner had to go back into the hospital again for
Oh,
another surgery, but he is doing well. He's recovering at home now, and we think he's on a better track with healing this time. So,
that's good.
yeah, yeah. Thank you, everyone, for your healing energy that you sent and your kind words. We both really appreciate it during this time.
No, we certainly will keep Martin in our thoughts and our prayers.
Thank you. Yeah, other than that, though, things have been going very well. Been a very busy time at Speak Your Own Book. Now that it's tax season and spring is here, everybody's got their budgets for marketing, so we're doing a lot of SEO content and a lot of training for different companies. So it's been a busy few weeks, yes.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. When it comes to Corellian Publishing, we've just published your book as you were
Yeah.
talking about before, and yeah, I agree with you on the natural versus synthetic materials. I think we humans tend to imbibe things with our own energy all the time,
Mm-hmm.
whether they're man-made objects or naturally found objects.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't seem to really make a difference, at least in my experience and the experience of those I know who work with these different things. In
Mm-hmm.
particular, Atalanta Bone Witch comes to mind,
Mm-hmm.
or Atalanta Moonfire, the Bone Witch, at bonewitch.com. She also uses synthetic objects in throwing
Mm-hmm.
the bones.
Yeah.
So like things like dice or something like that. She
Mm-hmm.
talks about that extensively in her book. So if you're interested in that, she's self-published, but we love supporting our self-published pagans. So
Absolutely.
yeah, go visit her website and check her out. She's coming out with her second book soon on advanced bone magic. So
And what was her site again? The
uh,
Bone Witch?
bonewitch.com. No the in front of it. It's
Uh,
just bonewitch.com.
Very cool. And hello to Magical Mermaid in the chat room.
Hi, Magical
Uh,
Mermaid. Good to see you.
yeah, my mother was very fond of Goldstone. And I'm fond of Goldstone also, and I find it very, very effective for the things that you use Goldstone for, which in my experience is primarily for prosperity. But it's absolutely artificial. It's not a stone that is dug out of the earth, it's a kind of glass. But in that glass are natural elements, and it still has its own energy, and it's very effective in my experience. And the fact that I grew up with that certainly does affect my attitude toward artificial stones because I've seen them used my whole life. Um, and on a slightly different kind of artificial stone, my grandmother had a ring that passed down through the family that was a ruby, beautiful ring, but it was a lab grown ruby from the early 1920s. But it was as powerful a stone as you would want to encounter. Um, And my thought on stones in general is that they're very individual, and the stone you find on the trail in the forest may be the most powerful stone you ever encounter, or that piece of goldstone might be. It's going to depend on a lot of different variables, and like I often come back to flexibility, and I think that that's very important in dealing with stones and everything else because it's not going to be exactly what you expect necessarily. It's going to be individual. It's going to be like life itself. And it may throw you some curves in terms of how things are best used, how things are situated. And one of the things I like to disagree with people over are the idea of dominant hands. You'll often hear people talk about in spiritual use how you should use your right hand to send out energy and your left hand to receive it, which is not what I do at all. Um, I find, if anything, I tend to be better at sending with my left hand and receiving with my right, but I can use them both. And I think everyone can if they will. I think it's a matter of training. I think even when it comes down to things like writing, a lot of it is training. That people start by making one hand dominant. They don't ever really try to use the other. I think a lot of people would find themselves ambidextrous if they gave it a try and a little bit of practice. I
Yeah,
mean, what do you say about
even even in yoga practice, it's the same concept. We don't
it?
just work on the right side or just work on the left side. We work on both sides so that there is a balance in the body, and we can use both sets of muscles equally well, or at least comparably well. Yeah.
I think this is a manifestation. This idea of having that rigid differentiation between the dominant and non-dominant hand is a manifestation of certain kinds of Christian spirituality that want to only emphasize spirit and not physicality. And I think that we need to to develop both always, and that will be reflected in our body as well. And that's not to say anything against people who are developed in such a way that they have just one dominant hand. But you might try using the other hand and see what happens. You may be surprised. Um, and particularly when we're talking about energetic work, they should really both work just as well for all purposes. And if they're not, it's because you've trained them that way. And I would say work on equalizing, and you'll be happy that you did.
Yeah, agreed. In addition to, well, actually, complementary to your book, we've just put out a short video on TikTok and Facebook and Instagram about strange tools that people have used in ritual. Including synthetic objects like a rusty spoon. Um,
Hmm.
so if you've had your own strange tool or synthetic material that you've used in spell work or in ritual. Type it in the chat here, or you can jump on our video on TikTok or Facebook or Instagram and add your comments on there as well to let us know what your most interesting or unique tools have been.
And Kayleen says, I use either hand for sending and receiving as best fits the situation. E- Exactly what I'm saying. And I have taught casting circle occasionally with back facing out for mental flexibility. Absolutely, mental flexibility is very important because I always like to say magic is worthless if it's not going to help you when your car is speeding off the road. Um, Meaning that if you're in an unusual situation, you have to be able to use these things, and you have to be flexible enough to know that you can. Magical Mermaid says one day man may be able to create artificial diamonds that are more hard and brilliant than natural diamonds. Well, yes, um, and um, actually we're doing a pretty good job of it now. And hello to Wendy in the chat room. And Wendy says, "Good afternoon, Reverend Don and Krys. I hope you're both doing well." Thank you,
Good
Wendy.
afternoon. Yeah, good to see so many people in the chat. And
Good.
yeah, I think that Magical Mermaid has it very correct that that artificial diamonds may at some point be harder and more brilliant than natural diamonds.
Mhm.
Um, yes, the amazing things that they've been doing with stone technology these days. We've talked about it actually in the book. There were
Mhm.
several sections where you talked about how different aspects of the stones were also used with technology or with
Yeah,
science, and that was really fascinating to learn about. Um,
I think one thing people don't realize is that the reason some of these substances that we think of as largely decorative now are so valuable is how practically useful they were. I mean, gold is valuable because it was so easy to work and did not degrade depending on its purity. The same with silver, very easily worked, therefore very important metal in early technology. Um, Diamonds became very Valuable because they were so very hard. They were unique in that sense and useful in physical ways. Now, as we've expanded our technology, many of these things have simply become decorative, but they weren't always. And if we really come down to it, even jewelry itself was originally more likely to have been magical than decorative. Um, as for many of us, it still is. And Wendy says, I love stones. I love stones too.
Yeah, stones are awesome.
The bigger and flashier they are, the more I love them.
Yeah.
I
It's-
find
mhm.
one of the things I'm following a lot online are jewelry channels that show historic and or contemporary jewelry. And I found that I invariably will like the biggest, flashiest ones. I'm predictable.
That's awesome.
What's the
Another
point of wearing jewelry if it's not going to knock everybody's eye out?
I tend to lose jewelry pretty easily, so yeah, I just stick with stones, and I have like several stones that I'll carry in my pocket or my purse.
Mm,
Yeah, so my jewelry is my stones. So
that's wonderful.
are my stones. Yeah, so the other book that we are currently updating is actually one that we've published before. It is
Hmm.
the Beltane Blessings book.
Yes.
That is a guide for parents and pre high school children, so middle grade children,
Hmm.
and um, uh, we've updated the book to include questions guide as well as some examples of ways to phrase your own answers and custom create your own answers. So I just wanted to go over that particular book really briefly with the audience, and kind of share the goals of this book. The guide is designed to not just guide the children through a ritual for Beltane, but there's actually four separate parts to the book. One part is the ritual that is designed for middle grade children to be able to plan, gather all the necessary materials for, assign parts, and present it together or with the family. There's also a myth about Rhiannon for the mythology around this, and it covers Rhiannon's marriage story and has some related questions to that story that tie it into the ritual. And then a third part of it is a guide for parents and middle school students to talk about sexuality and gender identity and be able to discuss those things as well as talk about concepts like consent and the importance of setting boundaries, not just in romantic or sexual relationships, but also in friendships and in family relationships. So, all of this is really good advice that Sarah Hartsong has put together. Sarah is the head of the Tree of Life Sanctuary based out of Washington. And she has about, I think it's 30 years of experience or so working with children in pagan spaces and teaching sex education for children of all ages and adults, as well as students with disabilities. So these are really important, but also really difficult topics to talk about. The fourth part of the book is a story about modern day children, kind of discovering their own sexuality and gender identity. The story is about three children who kind of have crushes on each other at a Beltane event, and they have their first kiss together. The girl in the situation starts her period. So it's a lot of just really deep storytelling around that time in a kid's life when they're going through all of these crazy changes and how they deal with them, as well as how it has healthy ways to talk about these changes too.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So if anyone has any questions on that, I'm happy to answer it. Or if anyone would like to purchase current edition that we have that's available on our website. If you would like to purchase the new one, and you would like us to hold that purchase until the new one is released, which we believe will be before the end of the month, then just put a note in your order that asks us to hold it until edition 2 is released.
Yes. Very cool.
And you can find that on our website at corellianpublishing.com.
So lots of cool things going on, and I'm starting work on my next piece, but we're still in the process of pushing out the last one. So
Yeah.
the next one is going to be about psychic and energetic development, and probably around Beltane or Midsummer, remains to be seen. Um, and we've talked about calling it Reverend Don's Book of Energy or Reverend Don's Book of Psychic Development. We'll see which one it ends up being.
Yeah.
But it's the same book either way, and that will be my next subject because there's a lot to be said on that subject, a lot to be written on that.
And I'd love to hear in the chat if anyone has any thoughts about Book of Energy versus Book of Psychic Development, and which title you prefer, or if you have a third option that you'd like to share with us. And speaking of the Book of Energy, or of whatever working title we're
Mhm.
going with right now, it might be interesting for the audience to kind of hear a bit about how you brainstorm the topics that you want to cover in your books. So, what's your process like for kind of mapping out your this particular book, the Book of Energy?
Well, that's an interesting question. And I would have to say that the considerations begin with how much I have to say about it.
Mm.
Is there? I mean, I could probably write on any subject, but I can write a lot faster on some than on others. On this subject, once I'm able to sit down with it, it will come together very quickly. Of course, I said that about stones too. Uh, but oh, and Wendy suggests psychic and energy development. That's not necessarily a bad suggestion.
And Magical
I like.
Mermaid says sexual consciousness is actually isn't actually a thing these days. Nice to see, even if it is if difficult. Yeah, absolutely. These are conversations that my parents certainly did not have with me, much to the detriment of my knowledge in those areas. And it took me a lot longer to discover who I was and how to set boundaries and all of those kinds of things that could have been avoided with a proper, well rounded sex education.
Mhm. Absolutely.
And going back to the psychic book for psychic and energy development, like as Wendy suggested, what are some topics that you definitely want to cover in this book?
Well, it basically is an instruction manual for how to develop energetically and psychically, and it will deal with chakras. Probably we'll talk to some extent about both the major chakras and other aspects of the chakras and the meridians, but primarily we'll deal with the major chakras, with developing those in a psychic manner, with developing um, the tools that you need for clairvoyance and oracular work, with creating energetic constructs, with developing different aspects of psychic ability. One of the things that I believe will be part of it um, will be development of the throat chakra in order to better use that. Um, Magical Mermaid says, hopefully, people coming out in their 50s will be a thing of the past.
Yeah.
That may be. Um,
Hopefully, coming out will be a thing of the past. That's what we're working towards here in the Netherlands. A lot of the kids don't celebrate coming out day. They say, why bother? Straight people don't
mhm.
have to come out. Why should I?
Yeah. And hello to Mystic Order of the Sacred Circle. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Um, yeah, I mean, it would be nice if people can just be people. Um, we're in a very interesting time, and I think a lot of how the future is going to go is going to be shaped now. And I think we need to be looking at what we are doing to shape that future. And I think we need to also be careful in how we do it, and use our minds in finding the most constructive ways to stand up to the things that we believe in.
Yeah.
Um, with that, I think it's time for a word from our sponsor. And so, wow, we made it through the whole day without the internet going out. I shouldn't actually say that. Ready to unlock the secrets of the universe? Join me, Rev Don Lewis, for my metaphysical and magic auctions at Gaia Thrift at whatnot.com. Discover fascinating artifacts, mystical crystals, and rare and unusual books that could change your life. Don't miss this chance to bring a little magic into your world. Rev Don's Metaphysical and Magic Auctions, where the extraordinary can become yours. And thank you to our sponsors, Equinox Learning Hub, and that's weird. They've changed the buttons, so I guess I'll leave that there for the moment because I have to figure out how to get rid of it. Yesterday I had the same problem on my phone, but I thought it was just the phone. Previously, there had been a button to hide that, but they've changed that. Anyway, thank you to our sponsors, Equinox Learning Hub, Rev Don's Metaphysical and Magic Auctions. The next auction will be Saturday evening at 7 p.m. Central, and we will have spell kits and tarot cards and metaphysical jewelry and lots of haunted dolls and interesting things.
Sounds cool.
And Wendy says, that's surprising. I'm trying to remember when sex education became taboo in school. And that's an effect of the rise.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An effect of the rise of Christian dominionism.
Yeah.
And a particularly strong battleground just at present. I don't know that I want to say curious for what we'll see in the next generation as a result of these battles, but we'll see one way or the other. But we've come to the end of our half hour. Thank you for joining me, Krys.
Thank you for having me.
It's always good to see you. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I hope you enjoyed the program. And let us close with our prayer, as we always do. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for all that you do for us in our lives, and we rejoice in this walk we walk together. And we ask you to help us to find the magic in everyday items around us, as well as the extraordinary items around us. Help us to have magical and fulfilling lives, and to remain flexible enough to have the best benefit of everything that we come across. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you with great love, and knowing you're always with us, we thank you for your presence, and may you be blessed now and always. I thank you for your presence. May you be blessed now and always, and I will see you again tomorrow.